There's a moment when everything inside you screams to react, to shout back, to slam the door, to send that angry text, and in that one split second most people lose control, not to the world, but to themselves. You know that feeling, when emotions boil over and logic disappears, when your heart races, your fists clench, and suddenly you're saying or doing something you can't take back. And then comes the silence, the regret, the damage. Here's the truth no one wants to hear. Your emotions are not the problem, your lack of control is. We're taught to feel everything, to be in touch with your emotions, but no one teaches us how to master them, how to stop being a puppet pulled by invisible strings. Fear, anger, jealousy, insecurity, how to stand calm when the storm inside is raging. But here's something you probably haven't been told before. Emotional control isn't about becoming cold, it's about becoming powerful. Because in a world full of noise, distractions, opinions and chaos, the person who stays calm, focused and steady wins. This isn't about pretending to feel nothing. It's about learning how not to be ruled by everything. Think of the people you admire most, leaders, creators, visionaries. You'll notice one thing they all have in common. They don't let their emotions make decisions for them. They feel them but they don't serve them. Now let me ask you this. How much energy have you lost in overthinking something someone said? How many opportunities have slipped away because you reacted too fast? How many nights have you stayed up, replaying conversations that don't even matter anymore? What if you could reclaim that energy? What if you could walk into any room, any conflict, any situation with complete emotional clarity? No panic, no drama, no mental fog. In this video you'll learn how to do exactly that. We're going to break down how emotions silently control you, without you even realizing it. We'll expose how certain words, situations and people pull your strings, and how to cut those strings once and for all. You'll learn why emotional triggers aren't random, they're trained patterns, and you'll discover how to spot them before they trap you. You'll understand why emotional discipline is not something you're born with, but something you build, day by day, moment by moment. And here's the part no one tells you. The world profits off your emotional weakness. Social media wants you angry, marketers want you impulsive, toxic people want you reactive. Why? Because emotional people are easy to control. But when you learn to pause before reacting, when you become unshakable in the face of stress, pressure or insult, you flip the script, you become the one in control. This journey won't be easy. You'll have to fight your own habits, your impulses, your inner voice that says just let it out. But here's the reward: clarity, strength, power, peace. People will wonder why you're so calm under pressure. They'll ask how you stay focused when everything's falling apart. And the answer will be simple. You stopped letting emotions drive the car. So if you've ever felt like your emotions are sabotaging your focus, if you've said things in anger you wish you could take back, if you've let fear stop you from taking a risk, if you're tired of being exhausted from battles that only happened inside your own mind, then stay with me till the end. Because what you're about to learn can change not just how you feel but how you live. Let's begin. Before we talk about controlling emotions, we need to understand one thing clearly: the problem with overreacting. Overreacting feels good in the moment. It gives you a release. You feel like you're standing up for yourself, making a point or protecting your pride. But that short burst of satisfaction often comes with a long trail of regret. You might win the argument, but you lose your peace. You might say what's on your mind, but lose a friend. You might lash out, but lose control of your image, your influence or your growth. When you act on impulse, you're not thinking, you're reacting. It's fast, emotional and unfiltered. And while that might feel honest, it's rarely wise. Your emotions may be real, but that doesn't mean they should decide your action. There's a huge difference between feeling something and acting on it. Most people never learn that, so they keep making the same emotional decisions, hurting themselves and others in the process. Emotions like anger, jealousy or fear don't ask for permission, they show up without warning. But you still get to choose your next move, and that's where your power is. The second you hand that power over to your emotions, you become a slave to your impulses. And when you're led by emotions, the outcome is always unpredictable. You say things you didn't mean. You burn bridges you didn't intend to destroy. You make choices you wouldn't have made if you had taken just one deep breath. Think about how many times you've looked back and said, I shouldn't have reacted like that. That's not weakness. That's awareness. That's your inner voice, waking up and showing you that your reactions are costing you something: your peace, your energy, your self-respect. Overreaction doesn't just damage relationships, it drains your time, your mental space, and your emotional balance. And the worst part, the more you overreact, the more you train your brain to respond emotionally, instead of logically. You build a habit, a pattern, and unless you break it, that pattern runs your life. Not because others are against you, but because you didn't pause long enough to respond with intention. Understanding this is the first step to taking back control. Before we talk about emotional triggers and how to deal with them, we need to understand the key difference between emotions and logic. They both have their place. Emotions are fast. They show up instantly, without warning. You feel something the moment something happens. Your heart races, your stomach drops, your mind spins. That's emotion at work. It reacts in real time. It doesn't wait. It doesn't pause. It just responds. But logic is slow. It waits. It watches. It steps back before stepping in. Logic doesn't shout. It whispers. It doesn't take control unless you invite it in. That's why so many people live their lives ruled by emotion, because emotion is louder and quicker. It feels more powerful, even though it's often more destructive. Emotions can light a fire, but logic keeps you from getting burned. Most people don't pause long enough to let logic speak. They feel something, and they move. They get angry and they argue. They feel insecure and they act defensive. They feel jealous, and they sabotage. But those fast decisions often lead to long-term consequences, and what you realize later is that those reactions weren't based on truth. They were based on temporary feelings. Feelings that changed an hour later. Feelings that clouded your judgment. Logic doesn't erase emotion. It organizes them. It gives you a clear path. When you let logic take the lead, your choices become sharper. Your focus gets stronger. You stop chasing every feeling, and you start following a plan. You stop reacting, and you start responding, and that small shift can completely change your life. When logic is your compass, you begin to create space between what you feel and what you do. That space is where self-control is born. It's where emotional mastery begins. You stop jumping to conclusions. You stop fueling drama. You start really thinking about what matters, what's worth your time, and what's just noise. In that space, you find peace. You don't need to fight every battle. You don't need to prove every point. You don't need to chase people's approval. You stay steady even when things around you feel shaky. And over time, your life becomes more stable, not because emotions disappeared, but because logic started leading. Before we talk about building emotional discipline, we need to understand how emotions control you silently, without permission, without warning, and often without your awareness. Most emotional reactions aren't choices. They're automatic. You don't think about feeling angry. You don't plan to get jealous. You don't schedule moments to feel afraid. These emotions appear suddenly. One comment, one look, one situation. That's all it takes. And in that instant, something inside you reacts. You feel heat in your chest, tension in your jaw, or a wave of panic in your mind. It happens fast, and it feels real, but it's not always accurate. Your brain is wired to protect you. It scans your surroundings for threats, and sometimes it reacts to emotional discomfort the same way it would react to physical danger. That's why you feel attacked even when no one's attacking you. That's why you feel rejected even when no one said no. That's why a small disagreement feels like the end of a relationship. Your brain is constantly making assumptions, and your emotions respond as if they're fact. This is how emotions start controlling you silently. They don't need a loud reason. They just need a trigger, and once they're activated, they begin shaping your thoughts, your behavior, and your choices. You stop seeing the truth, and you start seeing through the lens of how you feel. If you're angry, everyone seems disrespectful. If you're insecure, every silence feels like judgment. If you're anxious, every delay feels like rejection. That's when emotions take over. You begin responding not to what's happening, but to what you believe is happening. And most of the time that belief is built on a feeling, not a fact. The scariest part is that this entire process is happening in the background. It becomes your default setting. You don't question it, because it feels natural. But just because something feels natural doesn't mean it's helping you. The more often you give in to these silent emotional reactions, the stronger they become. Like grooves in your brain, they deepen every time you follow them. Before you know it, you're not just feeling emotions, you're following them blindly. You're letting them lead your conversations, your relationships, your self-worth, your goals. And the worst part, you think it's normal. Before we talk about building emotional strength, we need to look closely at what sets you off. Your emotional triggers. These are the things that make you feel upset, angry, hurt, anxious, or even shut down. And here's the truth. You can't control emotions you don't understand. You can't fight what you can't see. That's why the first step to emotional discipline is identifying your patterns. Everyone has emotional triggers. Some people get defensive when they feel ignored. Others feel anxious when they're not in control. Some feel insecure when someone questions their decisions. These responses don't come from the present moment, they come from old wounds, fears and beliefs. You may not realize it, but a single word, tone or gesture can remind your brain of something painful from the past. And without knowing why, you react, you shut down, you explode, you withdraw. But that reaction doesn't come from strength, it comes from habit. And like any habit, it can be unlearned. Start by watching yourself, not to judge, just to observe. When something upsets you, pause and ask, what exactly triggered me? Was it something they said? Was it the way they said it? Was it the feeling of being left out, of not being in control, of being misunderstood? Look for patterns. Is it always a certain kind of situation, a specific person, a topic you avoid? Maybe your trigger is when someone questions your intelligence, or when someone interrupts you, or when plans suddenly change. These moments may seem small on the surface, but if they spark a strong emotional response, that's your signal. And don't stop at just noticing the trigger. Dig deeper. Ask yourself, why does this bother me so much? Often the answer goes back to a time when you felt powerless, unloved, or not good enough. That's where the emotion is rooted. But once you see the pattern, you can change it. You can prepare for it. You can choose a better response next time. Awareness creates space. And in that space you take back control, not by avoiding your emotions, but by understanding them. Because the more clearly you know your triggers, the less power they have over you. Before we talk about building emotional discipline, let's understand one of the most powerful tools you have: detachment. Detachment isn't coldness, it's not apathy, it's not pretending you don't care, it's learning how to create space between what happens and how you respond. It's the ability to step back, not to disconnect from life, but to gain perspective. When emotions hit hard, the mind wants to react fast, but detachment teaches you to pause, to breathe, to observe instead of instantly engage. Most people live on emotional autopilot. Something happens and they jump in, they argue, they defend, they overthink, they assume, but that rush often makes things worse. Detachment slows the process down. It helps you see the situation for what it is, not for what your emotions are making it feel like. You stop reacting to the story in your head and start responding to the facts in front of you. This pause isn't weakness, it's mental strength. It means you're no longer driven by emotional chaos. You're grounded, you're aware, and you can choose a better way forward. You don't allow one moment of anger to define your day. You don't let someone's opinion shake your identity. You don't let disappointment turn into self-doubt. Detachment also protects your energy. Every emotional reaction takes something from you: time, clarity. When you detach, you stop giving your energy away to things that don't deserve it. You stop replaying conversations. You stop taking things personally. You stop trying to fix what isn't yours to carry. This doesn't mean you shut down or avoid emotion. You still feel everything, but you don't drown in it. You become the calm in the storm. You learn to let thoughts pass without grabbing onto each one. You see people's behavior without letting it control your mood. You understand that not everything needs a response. Some things need silence. Some things need patience. Some things just need space. And that's where detachment becomes a superpower. In that space, you take back control of your life, not by force, but by clarity. You become someone who can feel deeply and still stay steady. Someone who knows when to engage and when to let go. Before we talk about guarding your energy, we need to understand what it really means to build emotional discipline daily. This isn't something that happens once. It's not a single decision or a motivational moment. It's a skill, and like any skill, it gets stronger with daily repetition. Control isn't built in a day. You don't suddenly become calm, unshakable, or focused. You become that way through practice, through showing up for yourself even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. You have to train your emotions the way an athlete trains their body. Small efforts, daily commitment, progress over perfection. Start with the little things. The traffic jam that usually makes you tense. The slow internet that tests your patience. The rude comment that would normally ruin your mood. These moments might seem too small to matter, but they are exactly where discipline is built. If you can't stay calm in the small things, how will you ever stay calm in the big thing? The way you respond to these micro triggers becomes your emotional foundation. Emotional discipline is also about how you talk to yourself in hard moments. When you fail, do you tear yourself apart, or do you stay grounded and reflect without judgment? When someone disagrees with you, do you shut down or lash out, or do you pause, breathe, and choose clarity over chaos? Each of these moments is an opportunity, not to be perfect, but to be intentional. The truth is, most people wait for big breakthroughs, but emotional strength doesn't come from waiting. It comes from small silent wins that nobody sees.
The times you walk away instead of exploding. The times you stay present instead of checking out. The times you hold your tongue when you want to prove a point. That's where the real discipline is built. And some days you'll fail, you'll slip, you'll shrek. That's okay. What matters is that you don't give up. You recognize it, you learn from it, and you show up again tomorrow. Because the more you train your response in the ordinary moments, the more power you'll have in the extraordinary ones. Before we talk about learning to respond instead of react, we need to talk about one of the biggest emotional traps people fall into: taking everything personal. This habit creates stress, anxiety, and constant self-doubt. It makes you feel attacked when no one is even thinking about you. It makes you carry pain that was never yours to hold. The truth is, not everything is about you. Most of what people say and do has more to do with them than it does with you. Their reactions, their tone, their attitude. It often comes from their own fears, insecurities, and personal issues. When someone speaks harshly, it might be because they're overwhelmed. When someone ignores you, they might be distracted. When someone criticizes you, they might be projecting their own self-judgment. But if you take all of that personally, you absorb emotions that don't belong to you. When you assume that everything is a reflection of your worth, you lose perspective. You begin to twist innocent situations into personal attacks. You overanalyze every message, every silence, every word. Your mind fills with questions, like, did I do something wrong? Why are they treating me like this? What's wrong with me? And those questions slowly start to damage your self-esteem. You have to learn to create emotional distance. That doesn't mean becoming numb. It means stepping back and asking yourself, is this really about me? In most cases, it's not. People are complicated. They carry their own pain, stories, and habits into every interaction. And sometimes you're just the mirror reflecting what they don't want to see in themselves. Taking things personally also puts your emotions in someone else's hands. If they're kind, you feel good. If they're cold, you feel bad. You become emotionally dependent on how others treat you. That's not control, that's vulnerability. And the more you let people's moods define your worth, the more powerless you feel. But when you stop taking things personally, you regain that power. You realize that someone else's bad day doesn't need to ruin yours. That their opinions are not your truth. That their opinions are not your truth. That their behavior is not your identity. You stay centered in who you are, instead of constantly reacting to who they are. Before we talk about guarding your peace, we need to understand the difference between reacting and responding. This small shift can completely change how you handle pressure, conflict, and daily stress. Reaction is emotional, response is thoughtful, measured, and powerful. When you react, you're letting your emotions take control. You feel something, and you move, without thinking, without pausing, without checking in with yourself. Reactions are fast. They come from habit, not intention. You snap back in anger, you shut down in fear. You say things just to feel in control. But later, when your emotions settle, you look back and regret what you said or did. That's because reactions don't come from your higher self. They come from your emotional autopilot. Responding is different. It requires awareness. It takes strength to feel something deeply and still wait before speaking. It takes practice to choose your words carefully instead of firing back. When you respond, you're not ignoring your emotions. You're managing. You're saying, yes, I feel this, but I'm not going to let it control me. Response gives you power. It allows you to lead the moment instead of being led by it. You can stay calm during an argument. You can choose silence when you're provoked. You can ask questions instead of assuming the worst. This doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're in charge. You're not giving anyone the power to push you off center. The space between what happens and how you respond is where your growth lives. That pause is your strength. And in that pause you get to choose the kind of person you want to be. Someone who reacts without thinking, or someone who responds with wisdom and control. This shift also protects your relationships. It helps you speak with clarity, not confusion. It shows others that you can be trusted with hard conversations. And more than anything, it helps you protect your energy. Because every time you react emotionally, you waste mental strength on things that don't deserve it. Learning to respond, not react, doesn't mean you won't feel anger, fear, or pain. It means you've trained yourself not to let those emotions speak for you. You've created space, and in that space, you become strong. Before we talk about choosing stability over drama, we need to talk about guarding your energy. Because if you don't protect your mental and emotional space, the world will drain it without asking. Emotional people get drained quickly, not because they're weak, but because they give too much of themselves away without realizing it. They carry every emotion, every conversation, every insult, every mood shift around them like a weight. You have to understand, your energy is your responsibility. Not everyone deserves a reaction. Not every invitation to argue needs a reply. Not every emotionally charged moment needs your full attention. If you keep pouring your energy into chaos, overthinking and other people's drama, there will be nothing left for your peace, your purpose, or your growth. Staying centered isn't just a nice idea, it's a survival skill. In a loud world full of opinions, expectations, and emotional pressure, you must become the calm in your own storm. That starts with awareness. Ask yourself, what drains me? Who drains me? What habits leave me feeling tired, anxious, or unfocused? Then ask the harder question, why do I keep choosing those things? Guarding your energy means learning how to step back, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. It's knowing when to speak, and when to stay silent. It's understanding that not every problem is yours to fix. It's realizing that your peace is more valuable than being right, liked, or even understood. You're allowed to walk away from noise. You're allowed to say no without guilt. You're allowed to take time to recharge, reflect, and reconnect with yourself. People might not always understand your boundaries. That's okay. You're not here to manage their emotions. You're here to manage your focus, your health, your energy. Because once you let go of trying to control everything and everyone around you, you'll realize how much lighter life feels. You don't have to carry what doesn't belong to you. And that's the secret to lasting emotional strength. It's not just about controlling your reactions. It's about choosing where your attention goes, what you allow in, what you give your energy to, not out of selfishness, but out of self-respect. The more centered you become, the less you chase peace, because peace starts living within you. Before we talk about wrapping everything together, we need to talk about the final shift, choosing stability over drama. This is the point where everything changes, not in some loud or dramatic way, but in a quiet, steady decision. The decision to stop chasing intensity, to stop feeding conflict, to stop living in emotional chaos, just because it feels familiar. For a lot of people, drama feels normal. They're used to the tension, the arguments, the overthinking, the mental noise, and when things finally get quiet, it feels strange, like something's missing. But what's actually missing is the emotional roller coaster they've been riding for so long. They've confused peace with boredom. Calm feels empty, because chaos felt alive. But that's not life. That's just emotional addiction. Peace feels boring at first, but it's powerful. It gives you room to think clearly, to make better choices, to sleep at night, without replaying every conversation. It gives you freedom from the highs and lows that used to control you. It doesn't mean life will always be perfect. It means you won't be destroyed by small things anymore. You'll know how to stay grounded when things get messy. You'll stop needing external noise to feel something, because you'll feel steady inside. Choosing stability means being okay with not reacting to everything. It means letting go of the need to prove yourself. It means not chasing people who bring confusion and pain. You stop looking for attention that comes with you start choosing quiet strength over loud approval. You stop jumping from one emotional fire to the next, and you start walking with purpose. It's not always easy. Sometimes your mind will miss the drama. It will tell you that peace is too still, too slow, but that's just the old version of you talking, the one who didn't know how to live without emotional noise. Let it go. Let that version of you fade out, because the longer you stay in peace, the more you'll realize how powerful it really is. You'll start to enjoy the silence, the clarity, and soon you won't just choose peace, you'll protect it, because you'll finally understand that nothing is worth your inner chaos. Not opinions, not attention, not temporary excitement. Calm becomes your standard, and anything that threatens that calm, it simply won't fit in your life anymore.